Hello and welcome. This is the fifth video in your video series for Chapter 1, and we are diving straight into 1.5 Molecules of Life, Nucleic Acids. So if you can tell from the picture, we are going to be talking about DNA and RNA, and here are your learning outcomes. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to state the structures of nucleotide as the basic composition of nucleic acids, including DNA and RNA. You should be able to illustrate the structure of DNA based on Watson and Crick model. You should be able to state the types of RNA and compare DNA and RNA. Okay, let's talk about what's a nucleic acid. First things first, we need to talk about what it does. We talk about proteins, which are synthesized and is regulated by gene, the basic unit of heredity. Genes consist of DNA, which belongs to compounds called nucleic acids. Nucleic acids are polymers made up of monomers called nucleotides. So the paling basic na bentuk untuk nucleic acid adalah nucleotides. There are two types of nucleic acids, which are DNA and RNA. Nama panjang dia adalah deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA, and this contains information that is essential for almost all cell activities, including cell division. And the second is ribonucleic acid, or RNA, which stores and transfers information essential for the manufacturing of protein. Okay, let us keep moving on. We'll talk about the structure of a nucleotide. A nucleotide is made up of three components. The components are pentose sugar, nitrogenous base, and phosphate group. So here is the pentose sugar, nitrogenous base, and also phosphate group. We'll first talk about the pentose sugar. There are two types of pentose sugar that you can find in your nucleic acid. The first is ribose, which is found in RNA. As you can see from the structure here, pentose means it has 5 carbon. So carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what you can see at the second carbon, it has OH group. So ada oxygen, hydroxyl over here. The second type of pentose sugar is deoxyribose. It is found in DNA. The only difference between these two is the lack of an oxygen atom in carbon number 2. So in deoxyribose sugar in DNA, you can see carbon number 1, carbon number 2. At carbon number 2, it is only hydrogen, not hydroxyl. Ito siya. Okay, next we'll talk about the nitrogenous base. Nitrogenous base are rings of carbon and nitrogen, and there are two types. The first type is purine, the second type is pyrimidines. Purines have 6-membered ring joined to a 5-membered ring. So the two types of purines are adenine and guanine. This is what they look like. Nampak sini, ini adalah 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6-member ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5-member ring. Same thing here, 6 and 5. The second type of nitrogenous base is pyrimidines. Pyrimidines have single 6-membered ring, and there are 3 different pyrimidines, which are cytosine, thymine, and uracil. And all of them differ in the atoms attached to the ring. So this one, 6-member, 6-member, 6-member. But they have different atoms attached to the ring. Something you may already know, but I'll just say it again, is that thymine is only in DNA. Uracil is only in RNA. Adenine, guanine, and cytosine can be found in both DNA and RNA. Sometimes it can be a bit confusing which one is purine and which one is pyrimidine, and for that I try to remember it this way. Unicity, ini pyramid. So, how does that help me? Because city will become pyrimidines. Okay, ini cara saya ingatlah, city pyramid, for me to remember which one is pyrimidines. Okay, next we talk about the formation of phosphodiester bond in the structure of the nucleic acid. So, the nucleic acid is not gonna be on its own. Biasanya dia tidak keseorangan. Biasanya dia akan bersambung dengan nucleic acid lain. Sama ada DNA ataupun RNA. So, how does that happen is you look over here, the first nucleotide and the second nucleotide. At the third carbon, that OH, and the phosphate group punya H, this OH will be taken out, this H will be taken out, and form a molecule of water. When they are taken out, these two parts will join and form a bond. The bond is called phosphodiester bond. Okay, bond ini merujuk yang antara karbon nombor 3, oksigen, dan phosphate. This whole process, since it produces water, is called condensation reaction. Okay, so that is how you form phosphodiester bond in nucleic acids. Bila dia sambung-sambung macam tu, kita boleh pilih dia punya direction. Okay, once it is connected like that, for nucleic acids, we know which side is which. So polynucleotides will contain a 5' phosphate and 3' hydroxyl terminal groups. So bila kita sudah sambung, yang phosphate itu dipanggil hujung 5'. 5' end, 5. The common representation of polynucleotides is as an arrow with a 5' at the end at the left and 3' at the right. Okay, biasa beginilah kita susun. Sebelah sini adalah 5', sini adalah 3'. And this is also called the phosphate sugar backbone. The P, the deoxyribonucleose, begitulah. Dia punya phosphate sugar. That is the backbone. Okay, this is a very quick chapter, so we're moving on straight to the next point, which is the structure of DNA based on the Watson and Crick model. So this is what you usually see the DNA looks like. This is discovered by two scientists, mathematicians, Watson and Crick, dua orang berbeza. So they're both very intelligent, very smart people. They came up with this. They came up with the theory that DNA is arranged like this in the cell. And their theory did turn out to be right. Let us look at what that arrangement is. So according to Watson and Crick, DNA exists as two polynucleotide strands that wound around or are twisted, forming a double helix. So pertama kali diorang cakap DNA ini terdiri daripada dua utas DNA dan dia akan terbelit. Okay, it winds around each other or is twisted around each other, forming a double helix. So ini adalah double helix. Watson and Crick said the two strands are anti-parallel, which is they run opposite each other in orientation. One strand is 5' to 3', while another strand 3' to 5'. So if we look at the arrow here, this end will be 5' to 3', and this end is 3' to 5'. They also said that the backbone of each strand is made up of deoxyribose sugar and phosphate groups. These are the backbones. Backbone nomor 1, backbone nomor 2, dan terdiri daripada phosphate group and deoxyribose sugar. Next, they said that the bond between the 3' hydroxyl group of deoxyribose sugar and the phosphate groups is known as a phosphodiester bond. So, phosphodiester bond adalah ini. Dan ada beberapa phosphodiester bond, of course. Not just one. A nitrogenous base will be attached to the deoxyribose sugar by covalent bond. So, dia merujuk kepada ini. This part is the covalent bond. Next, what did Watson and Crick say? They said that the two strands are held together by hydrogen bonds between the bases. These are the hydrogen bonds between the bases. Adenine will form a base pair with thymine. Cytosine forms a base pair with guanine. In other words, purine will pair with pyrimidine. an AT base pairing formed by 2 hydrogen bonds, and CG base pairing formed by 3 hydrogen bonds. Each complete helical turn contains 10 base pairs. So what is meant here adalah helical turn, satu kali pusing begini, menggunakan 10 base pair. One helical turn is 3.4 nanometers. Distance between each base pair is 3.4 nanometers. Oh, sorry, 0.34 nanometers. Ini unit lain, ini nanometer unit lain. Okay. So if you need to describe anything with based on Watson and Crick's double helix DNA theory, you just remember the shape and you cerita satu-satu. Kalau kamu kena minta explain macam mana bentuk DNA menurut Watson dan Crick, kamu ingat bentuk DNA ini, diagram ini, dengan diagram ini, apa info yang kamu ingat, kamu cakaplah. All the information is quite basic, nothing too difficult to understand or memorize. Something that you might have trouble remembering or memorizing is which one pairs with which. Okay, for this one, mine is very easy. I remember cytosine and guanine. Dua-dua bulat. Dia macam bulat sikit. Okay. I remember cytosine and guanine have curved shapes. So if they come together, it looks like cytosine can hug the guanine. Macam dia memeluk. So ini cara saya ingat cytosine peluk guanine. Bila saya tengok adenine dengan thymine, saya nampak dua-dua ada bucu yang tajam. I look at them and I see that they have pointy corners. So when they're pointy, I only see two places for them to attach, which is at the top and at the bottom. So this is how I remember adenine and thymine pair with each other and they form 2 hydrogen bonds. Kalau ini 2 hydrogen bond, yang satu lagi memang 3 hydrogen bonds lah. Let us draw the hydrogen bond. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's how I remember it. Moving on, we talk about the types and the function of RNA. RNA is ribonucleic acid. They are single-stranded molecules. The sugar is ribose sugar. And they use 4 different nucleotide bases, which are adenine, guanine, cytosine, and uracil. There are 3 types of RNA, which is mRNA, rRNA, and tRNA. mRNA transcribes DNA and directs the translations of proteins. Itu kegunaan mRNA. Kegunaan rRNA, rRNA is involved in the translation of proteins. And last but not least, tRNA. It is the RNA that is involved by delivering amino acids to the ribosomes during translation. So you will learn more about these rRNA and how they function when we get to chapter 6. Okay, so bila kita masuk chapter 6, transcription of DNA, you will get to see them working in action. Okay. Last but not least, you should be able to differentiate and give the differences between DNA and RNA. So when you want to compare, you can compare what is the basic unit called. You can compare the pentose sugar. You can compare the nitrogenous base. You can compare the structure when it becomes a polynucleic acid. You can compare the size. DNA tends to be bigger, RNA tends to be smaller. Where you can find them, DNA tends to be found in the nucleus, RNA usually in the nucleus and also in the cytoplasm. And also the types. DNA, there's only one type of DNA, and RNA, there are 3 types of RNA. So that's about it. That's the end. This is just a quick summary. This is what RNA looks like. This is... Oops, sorry. Testing. Okay, I fixed it. Okay, so just a quick summary. This is what DNA looks like and that is what RNA looks like. So dia punya beza adalah ada oksigen atau tiada oksigen dan dari sana kamu cubalah ingat dia punya structure, dia punya properties. Okay? Alright. Okay. Once again, these are the learning outcomes that I hope you have achieved. There we go. I'm going down here. All right, we are going to the final part of the video. I'm sure you expected this. Time for your homework. What you should do now, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to ask you to copy this picture by hand and upload your drawing in Google Classroom. Ini saja kerja rumah kamu untuk 1.5. You just have to draw this. Not copy-paste this picture, okay? Lukis guna tangan. If you're drawing it on the computer, draw by hand also. If you have one of those, fancy computer pens. Okay, that is it. This is your homework. Make sure you submit. And that is the end of chapter 1. Thank you very much for following. Please keep up to date with your task. And I will catch you again in the next lesson. Thank you very much and goodbye.